Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Avi Havivi's weekly Siddur class.
So we're on the Psalm for Tuesday, which is at the beginning of davening, page 26 in the big Sim Shalom, at the end of Shachrit, page 87 in the Slim Shalom. We'll try to, it's a short one, so we should be able to cover the Psalm in one class session. And as we have been doing, we will try to understand the Psalm in its original, having nothing to do with Tuesday, because originally it probably had nothing to do with Tuesday. So we'll just try to understand it in and of itself, and then we'll ask, what does it have to do with Tuesday, third day of creation? Why was it selected? Does it gain any additional sense or meaning in context in the sequence of Psalms of the week? We saw the Psalm for day one is about only the righteous person can enter the temple in the great processional when God comes into the temple. The Psalm for Monday was about the righteous city, God's city of Jerusalem, impregnable, okay? Impregnable and righteous. So we have the righteous person, the righteous city, and now we're up to day 3. Mizmor la'asaf, a psalm by Asaph, for Asaph, in the style of the Psalms of Asaph, just the superscription, and then we have the psalm itself. This is a psalm, by the way, I will just foreshadow by saying some of what appears to be the pshat, or the simple manifest meaning of it, is very different if you read it as a modern, critical, historically informed person versus if you read it in a traditional framework. Because just to foreshadow, the question is, who are the gods? Who are the people who seem to be the other gods? If you read it in a modern, critical, historical framework, you have no trouble with that. You'd say, ancient Israelite ideas about monotheism evolved gradually, and this psalm reflects some intermediate stage of that evolution before monotheism, as we understand it, had 100% taken hold. If you are a more traditional thinker and reject that idea that ancient Israelite monotheism evolved, then you have a harder time interpreting who are the gods. And I will tell you that the traditional commentators who have that assumption are all over the place, by which I mean scattered, different kinds of interpretations on that question, because it is difficult if you read it from a traditional, I will use the term, from standpoint. Okay? Elohim nitzav ba'adat el b'kerev Elohim yishpot. God, notice it is not Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's not God's personal name. It is the more general name for God. God rises. I like that word. I was going to say stands up, but better English. God rises. God stands in. I'm gonna stick to as literal a translation as possible for starters. Ba'adat El, in the council of El. I want everyone to notice the awkwardness of that. God stands up in the council of God, but with different words for God, Elohim and El, and judges in the midst of the gods. So we have God 3 times. God stands up in the council of God and judges or establishes justice or says something justly in the midst of the gods. What does God say? We'll put a pause for a second on what is the council of gods. Let's figure out what God is going to say when God stands up. Ad matai tishbatu avel ufnei rishayim tis'u sela. How long will you judge perversely and recognize, lift up literally, the faces of the wicked, meaning lisa panim means to show preference to. It actually goes back to the Torah. And the Torah, it says, thou shalt not show preference to either the rich or the poor in doing judgment. And what's the accusation here? You, who is you? Who is God talking to? Presumably there's some sort of judges, because God is accusing them of judging unfairly. How long will you pervert justice and prefer or in a favor? Thank you. Favor the wicked. Shiftu dal viatom anivarash hatzdiku. You must judge, and here I think we have to insert a word, judge for, okay, the poor and the needy. Dal and evyon are synonyms for poor. We have 4 words for poor, by the way. Yatom is an orphan. Dal, ani, farash all mean poor. Okay? So, judge, I skipped a line. Sorry. We have dal, ani, rash, and evyon. 4 words for poor. Judge the poor and the orphan. The poor and the poor justify, right? Judge them justly. Palatu is a PL. It means to help someone escape the clutches of. What does our English say? Rescue. Okay. Rescue the poor and the needy. Save them from the hands of the wicked. So presumably here, right, the wicked are the oppressors. They are taking financial advantage of the poor, who are obviously more helpless. And God, Elohim here, is accusing some council of judges of saying, hey man, you are perverting justice. You favor the wicked. You should be taking the side of the poor and the downtrodden. That is the accusation of God. Everyone follow that? Okay. So let's pause for a moment and talk about what's the counsel. So again, if you take a critical historical view of it, like any modern Bible scholar would, when I say Bible scholar, I mean university Bible scholar, you would say, okay, monotheism evolved only gradually, and before it became total monotheism, there was some idea that there were multiple gods, and just like the king has a council of counselors, they sit together and debate, okay, or the Supreme Court. Up there in the heavens, there's also a Supreme Court or a council of gods or something like that. And one deity, presumably ours, okay, sort of goes without saying, stands up in the council and says, hey, you people are not doing justice. You're supposed to be doing justice. You're not. Look at the world. We might say, look at the world. It would appear that you are taking the side of the rich and not defending the poor. You who are supposed to be judging justly. Everyone follow that idea? Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Okay. And of course, we know as monotheism evolves later, the other gods, at first they are lesser gods and our God is more powerful. Then they get demoted to angels. And let's say in rabbinic literature, there are midrashim where every nation has what's called a sar, or in modern Hebrew, cabinet minister. Okay. Every nation has its divine representative. In English, we don't really have a better word than angel. Okay. Although it doesn't mean a divine being that does good things and flaps its wings around, right? Every nation has its sar. There are 70 nations in rabbinic idiom. Shivim umot haolam. So there's a giant council parliament, right, of 70. I don't want to call, in rabbinic literature, they're not gods, even with a lowercase g. 70 angels. Each one is the sar or minister or divine, supernatural representative of a nation. And they debate with each other, but we're lucky. By the way, who's our sar? Anyone know? Who is the sar, the cabinet minister angel who represents the Jews in all of these debates. You know his name. We've got two of him in our session today, in our Siddur class. We got two of them named after the Tsar of Israel. Michael.
Oh, wow.
Michael is the Tsar of the Jews in these midrashim that imagine a supernatural world where the Sarim are debating with each other. Like there's a midrash about, before the plague of the slaying of the firstborn, the Tsar of Mitzrayim, the Tsar of Egypt, is arguing before God, don't do this. And the Tsar Michael, who's the cabinet minister representing the great state of the Jewish people, is arguing in favor of this, and they're debating. Again, it's imagined in rabbinic literature as like a human, I don't know, like the Roman Senate or something like that, right? Where different representatives represent different groups, and they debate in front of God, and then God decides. Okay? So that's what happens to the gods in rabbinic period. They become angels, I'm going to put it in air quotes, who are supernatural beings who represent different nations of the world. And in some rabbinic tellings, Michael is our Tsar, and in some other rabbinic tellings, Hashem, God's self, is our Tsar. The other nations have angels in charge of them. We have God in charge of us. Okay? Everyone with me? So the gods are demoted to angels. So some of our traditional commentators say God is standing, and what this means is God is standing, this psalm means God is standing in the council of angels, the angels who represent the other nations of the world, and God says, you other angels in charge of your nations are not doing justice. They pervert justice. They favor the powerful, wicked, and they oppress the needy. And how long are you going to allow this to go on? Hashem is saying, or meaning, I'm not going to allow this to go on anymore. Let's put it that way. Okay. So, traditional commentators, of course, who know nothing of, these ideas of history of evolution, of monotheism, right? That's just not part of their awareness or vocabulary, right? See this as it's a council of angels, or some of the commentators say it's just a council of human judges. God says to the human judges on earth, hey, you judges are not doing justice, right? You're perverting the cause of justice by your favoring the wicked, powerful, rather than the poor, needy. So we could understand this as the council of gods, if you have a modern critical view, or the council of divine beings and angels in one rabbinic view, or another traditional view, God is just talking to human judges. Okay. That's a little more problematic because we do have the phrase Adat El, which sounds like divine counsel. Now, there are a couple of places in the Bible where Elohim does not mean God, but might mean something like judges or highest authority, highest human authority. Okay? There's some places in the Torah where Elohim doesn't mean God. It clearly means in context, even for traditional readers of the Bible, it clearly means in context human leadership. So that the fact that Elohim occasionally means that in the Bible, then gives the possibility of even traditional commentators saying Bekerev Elohim Yishpot just means God stands up in the council of human judges. We have sort of the word Elohim is used two different ways in the first line. Elohim, God with a capital G, stands up in some council, and he accuses the Elohim, who are the human judges. So we can have God speaking to human judges, God speaking to the ministering angels, but they're not the ministering angels who do kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. They're like the parliament representing the 70 nations of the world, or, a modern critical view. It's just the divine council of other gods who are seen as somewhat lesser gods, but nonetheless gods. And this is God's accusation against them, whoever them is, the lesser gods, the angels, or I'm going to pause, right? And then we'll go on. Question, comment, Terry, then Michael O. Terry.
So as monotheistic Judaism evolved, and many of the references to multiple gods out there were reinterpreted or changed. Why was this left here as one of the Psalms that we read every week?
Now, that's a great question. Or you could say it, your question more harshly. My goodness. How could the editor of the book of Tehillim allowed him or herself, themselves, to include such a pagan sounding psalm? Not pagan, but strictly monotheistic sounding psalm. I don't have a good answer to that question. Maybe the editor of the book of Tehillim wasn't quite as monotheistically evolved as you might think. Ms. Cohan Link, possibly. Maybe the traditional commentators have to bend themselves into pretzels to interpret this. Maybe it wasn't a problem. It certainly wasn't a problem for the author. Okay. And I guess maybe it just wasn't a problem for the editor. I don't know what else to tell you. Michael.
I'm reading a commentary in the Art Scroll, and it said, on the fourth day, God created on this psalm, the sun, moon, the maintenance of equity and justice is a prerequisite for the continued existence of the world that was revealed on the third day. But this message is not limited to only the courts. In his own personal life, every Jew is a judge, for his opinions and decisions about people can affect their lives in thousands of different ways.
Okay, nice drosh. So Michael just added a nut from Art Scroll. Thank you. Does it say in parentheses who it's from, by the way? Sometimes it'll say who the author or the commentator is, right? Nice interpretation. Internal psychological. And then, internal psychological means I've got to say to myself, hey, how come you favor the fancy people who you want to flatter and who you want to have them notice you? How come you don't pay more attention and take the side of those who really need your assistance? The downtrodden, the poor, the less fancy, something like that. That would be that's a nice drosh. I like that. Go ahead, Michael.
The other thing that they have here, when it says, as a result of another commentary in the Divine Assembly, the judges who seek truth and justice are the Divine Assembly because they represent God's justice on earth. As a result of the sincerity, God himself penetrates into their hearts, the Kerev Elohim, in the midst of judges, to assure them of reaching a just verdict, and that is attributed to Al-Sheikh.
Okay, got it. Well, I'm going to argue with that because I don't think he penetrates into them and actually changes what they do. Let's go on to the second half. Okay, so God is scolding the council of gods or the lesser divine beings or the angels or human judges, saying you're doing a bad job of what you are supposed to do, which is judging justly. Close quote. By the way, the quotes, the quotes here, obviously they're not quotes in the original book of Psalms because they don't have quotation marks back then, but the quotes in our Siddur are placed in a very good, correct place to help you understand it. Because now we're the end of the quote. So God has stopped talking, right? God has stopped addressing those judges directly in the second person. That's what I mean to say. We go on. Lo yad'u v'lo yavinu b'chashecha yitalachtu yimotu kol mosei haaretz. They don't know. They don't understand. They walk in darkness, and the foundations of the earth totter. Totter. Why are the foundations of the earth tottering? Apparently, because of the lack of justice. So we have some link here between some idea that justice is important for sustaining the earth. Hint, day 3. Okay? So God is saying, either God or the Psalmist, unclear, not entirely clear, is saying now somehow, well, of course they don't do justice. They do not understand and they walk in darkness, meaning whatever the Adat El was, whatever the in the midst of the Elohim, whoever they are, right, divine beings or humans or whatever, of course you can't rely on them. Their justice is blind, as it were, right? In this case, I guess that's the wrong way to say it, right? They don't know what they're doing. I mean, what greater metaphor could you say than they walk in darkness? They have no idea what they're doing. And I would add, parenthetically, as a result, the earth threatens to collapse. The earth is tottering because the implication behind that, because the earth is founded on justice. Justice is what keeps the earth solid, okay? There is no justice, and so the earth totters. Teeter-totters. Ani amarti Elohim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. I thought I had said, I believe, I'll be fancy. I believe the translation really is I had said, which is the pluperfect, I think, right? And this is, for those who know a little bit of biblical Hebrew, if it was just I said, it would be va'omar, right? But amarti means I had said. That means it's another way of saying I used to think that you were gods and you were all gods. So maybe all of these angels or other gods, maybe this is in a pro-monotheistic, anti-polytheistic line, right? I thought you really had power. I thought you were really gods. Or you judges, I really thought you had fairness in mind. What I always thought. That's what they always taught me in school about judges in America. I always thought you were all about justice. Achen, but indeed, in fact, ki adam timutun uchachad hasarim tipolu. But you're going to die just like any human being, and you will fall just like any sar. You'll get fired just like any other cabinet minister. Okay? So, hey, I thought you were a big deal. I thought, again, depending on what level you understand it, I thought you were truly judges, human, something weighty and fair and about justice. Or I thought you were angels had some power. Or I thought you other gods were actually real gods. But now I realize, no, you're going to die. You have no power. You're just mortal. All right? So we
is this psalm then expressing a disappointment in humans, basically?
Well, it's a disappointment in those who were thought to be judges. So if you say it's about humans, yes. If you say it's about deities, then it's different. I thought these other deities had power. They don't. Okay? Or I thought these judges were supposed to be fair, but you know what? They are feeble mortals who are swayed by the same things that regular humans are swayed by. I thought judges should be above that. Okay, I'm not making any political statements whatsoever, since we're going out to the whatever sphere, the what do we call it? The podcast sphere. Okay? So I thought you were really gods. I thought you were higher, but in fact, you're no better than anyone else. Or I actually thought you were divine beings, but now I see that you are actually not. You are finite and limited like human beings. I'm talking now, the psalmist, not God. Therefore, my conclusion, Kuma Elohim, we come back to Elohim, right? But what do we say before? Elohim Nitzav at the beginning, right? God stands up or rises in court. And now at the end, the psalmist on our behalf is saying, Kuma Elohim, come on, God, get up. Shoftah haaretz, judge the earth. Shoftah is, again, for those who are learning some Hebrew, Barbara Brieger, and Jonathan, the command form normally in regular Hebrew would be shvot, command, sivui, what do we call it in English? Imperative, right? Command would be shvot, but the biblical has an elongated version where you add a hey, and instead of shvot, you say shoftah, and that is called the hortatory, from the word exhort, E-X-H-O-R-T, right? It's a way of commanding by saying like, come on, I really mean it, right? So shvot means judge, shoftah means come on, judge, right? Sort of, it's what you would use if you were rooting for your team. Kick the ball, right? Okay. So that's what shoftah is. And we have that form elsewhere in biblical Hebrew. It's called the hortatory because you are it's not just a command. It is a command with exhortation. So, if the imperative has one exclamation point after it, then the hortatory has 2 or 3 exclamation points after it. We all understand that nowadays because of how we text and email, right? Add a couple of exclamation points to show that you really, really, really mean it.
Can you spell that word? I'm having a hard time hearing
hortatory, H-O-R-T-A-T-O-R-Y. That's just like the grammar nerd word for it. It's a form, the hortatory. But the way to understand it is from the English word to exhort someone. We know that word, like to really urge them on. Okay, so it's a command form with a greater sense of urgency than regular command, right? You might say to someone, pick up the cup. But if your kid leaves dirty dishes around the house all the time and doesn't bring them to the sink, you would say, pick up the cup. Okay. It has a little more sense to it. Has a couple more exclamation points after pick up. Okay. So arise. By the way, kuma is the same. I missed that. Kuma and shoftah are both, right? Normally you'd say kum and shvot, but kuma means come on, right? Why is this? Why do we have that sense in the context of this psalm? Why is it hortatory? Oops. Did I lose you? All right. Hold on. Shoot. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, you're there. Good. Okay, good. I thought I lost you. There you are. Sorry. I touched something on my computer. Why am I saying that in the psalm? Why is the psalmist saying that? In the context, it's not a trick question. Why is the psalmist using the hortatory?
Because he's trying to emphasize something really,
which is what, Michael?
Huh?
What? Why does the psalmist need to emphasize it in the context of the psalm? You have to go outside.
Because this is justice. If there's no justice, there can be no world.
The judges are corrupt. They're not taking the part of the downtrodden. They're taking the part of the wealthy. Look at the world around you. Yeah. Come on. Do justice. We really need that. That's the sense of it within the context of the psalm, the story of the psalm. Okay. Right. So get up, God, judge the earth. Ki atatin chal b'chol hagoyim. Nachala is usually portion, like inheritance, right? So, you might have thought at the beginning, the world is divided to 70 nations and each nation has a God. No. God, you are the ones that has dominion is a good enough non-literal but idiomatic translation. You are in charge of all the nations. So we have a number of stories within the psalm. I don't know about a number. I can think of at least 2. Okay. One is, I thought that one is about the transition from polytheism to monotheism. I thought those deities had power, but you know what? The earth is such a mess. They obviously don't. Hashem, you are the only one who rules over everything. Please make sure to do justice in the whole world. Okay. That's one story. Another story is these human judges, you can't rely on them. The only fair, good, real judge is Hashem. Or if we want to go with the internal psychological interpretation that Michael O cited from the Art Scroll, if this is all internal, hey, I'm always, my thinking and my behavior is corrupt. I'd like to think of a nicer word than that because, I favor the fancy people. I'm nicer to the neighbors who drive Maseratis than the neighbors who drive, a beat up old something or other, don't even have a car, right? Because I fall prey to the same prejudices. But come on, my conscience, get on board with the program. Okay? What's really important? What's really just? What's really fair? So it could be an internal dialogue if you want to say that. Okay?
Avi?
Yes. Barbara.
Excuse me. Do you think that this exclamation, this hortatory exclamation, is partially because he's talking to God and he's kind of scared about it? And I mean, you're talking to the top guy, or top girl.
Uh-huh.
And do you think that's why he makes this expanded exclamation,
that's nice.
He's trying to order somebody that he normally wouldn't be wanting to order.
You don't go ordering God. You don't say to God, hey man, where you been? Yeah. I'm looking at the state of the world and when are you going to step in and do justice? So yes, it could be that. I think an alternative is it could be, again, a little bit of desperation, right? Because I thought these judges were going to run the world justly and look at how things are. They're corrupt. Okay. So it could be desperate. So it could be humble. It could be desperate, probably other options, but it's good. So, right. Always interesting to say okay, so what's the sense of that? Why did they do that verb? Michael?
The Art Scroll again sort of comes in here and says for that, Asaph, the psalmist addresses God, you sought to avoid strife by allotting a fair share to all nations. Now, step in, judge the earth, and undo man's destructiveness.
Good. You tried to set it up somehow. It ain't working. Okay? It ain't working. Parent has to step in, right? They tried to have a system, right? The nation should work it out. They're each represented by a SAR. It's not working. Okay, good. Why Tuesday? Let's start with why, not sequence. How does it fit after the other two Psalms? But why for Tuesday? And we'll try to wrap it up by 2 minutes. Why do you think this might have been picked for Tuesday? I gave you a hint. I don't think I gave you a hint. I think I actually said it. Yimotu kol moste aretz. The foundations of the earth will totter. So on Tuesday, God establishes, in some sense, the earth by having the aretz. That's the word that's used. Okay? By having the dry land appear. So there, on a very superficial linguistic level, you could say aretz. Okay? But then on a deeper metaphoric level, it's making suggesting that the earth, as we know it, right, can only continue to exist if there's justice. Justice is a foundation of the earth as we know it. If there's corruption and non-justice, the earth totters. It threatens to collapse. Okay, so I think I think it's the justice here is used kind of as establishing, I guess, which is a metaphor. Establishing earth is a metaphor for establishing justice. I don't mean to suggest that justice was created on the third day of creation, but I think the psalmist is using it as a metaphor. By the way, there are many other places where lack of justice, many other places in the Tanakh where if there's lack of justice, there's the threat of the world collapsing, right? The world is founded upon justice. it's a bit of a Hobbesian view of the world, not Calvin and Hobbes, but as we always say, but Thomas Hobbes, right? Justice is necessary to keep things, which means people, in line, because without it, they will take advantage of each other, right?
If you look at the world today, it does seem sometimes like that is an absolute true statement.
One might say that. Okay, so I think one connection with Tuesday, the obvious connection with Tuesday, is the earth is founded on justice, and on day 3, God establishes the earth as we know it by having dry land appear. Any other thoughts about that? I don't think I have any other ideas about that. That's my only one. So if we want to put it in sequence, and I'll close with this, Sunday, because we'll continue following this thread through the whole week, not the thread, but see is there a thread. Sunday, who can come up to the God's mountain, the holy temple? Only the righteous person. I emerged from Shabbat feeling cleansed and good, and I haven't done any sins yet in the week, right? So I'm hoping I can be that righteous person. Monday Psalm was about righteous city, right? The city of, God's city, which is filled with, I think we said 3 words, chesed, mishpat, which is justice, and tzedek. Okay. Day 3, I thought that there was some system of justice, whether it's the gods or the angels or the humans who are in charge of leadership of the other humans. I thought there was. Boy, was I bitterly disappointed. Are they a total failure of doing their job? God, come on, please. We need you. You are the only source of justice, right? It's a little bit like a similar idea to the justice blessing in the middle of the Amidah. I forget what number it is, somewhere in the teens, right? It says, God, come back and establish justice because we can't rely on these other human people. They're not doing a very good job of it, right? It's only when you are the judge that justice is done effectively. So similar idea. Okay?
I do like the fact that you brought in the Amidah because, it's a reminder that when every one of us davens that, that maybe they should think of their own innate God, spark that their God-given spark of godliness and aspire to a higher level in that day.
So again, we can look at it on a more, I'm going to say, concrete level. It's about justice, it's about politics, it's about society, how it's governed, or one can look at these things on a more internal level, more internal psychological level.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.